today we are looking at what I think is the hardest color to mix for, which are grays. I personally hate mixing for gray. They are like my least favorite color to ever mix for a long time. I just refuse to use them in a painting. And because of that, I own a lot of convenience grays, and so we're going to look at some of my favorite convenience grays, and then we're going to look at the pigments that make up those convenience grays, because once you know the pigments that those grays use, the grays themselves make far more sense. So I've chosen 2 large brand grays, and then the rest are small shop grays, just so that we've got a selection of different colors to look at. Some of them only use 2 pigments, and some of them use as many as 5, and so you'll get a really good idea of what the different colors look like. I also chose blue grays that had a variety of different undertones, so most of them are blue gray because I wanted to choose grays that all use at least one of the same pigments. And so in this case, all of the grays in question use lapis or PB29. The version I've chosen is Cosmic Creations Lapis because it's my favorite. But I'm going to swatch out all the different colors that these various grays use. I've pulled them all from my palette, and then much like in the Potter's Pink video, we are going to mix these grays up so we can see what they look like trying to create them for ourselves. I haven't mixed these grays. I know the pigments that are in them because I've written them out, but other than that, I don't know really what they're gonna do when I try and create them myself. As a rule, I don't like mixing for gray, and so I just have a whole bunch of convenience ones in my palette. My favorite is the Schmincke 2022 Random Gray, and we're not gonna swatch that one out or try and make it because it was a mixture of all their waste pigments from 2021. And because of that, it's sort of impossible to recreate. It doesn't have pigment numbers listed on it, though there are a variety of really cool videos on it on YouTube, and I might do one on it, though I don't believe it's available any longer. Though you can still find it in places like Facebook Marketplace and paint swap groups on Facebook. So I'm going to let these dry, and I'm going to label everything, and then we'll be back to look at mixing them ourselves. So the colors are all dry, and everything is swatched, and so I am going to start with the 2 that I think are the easiest because according to their labeling, they are the same mixture. And I'm going to start with the Jane's Gray because I'm pretty sure it is just ultramarine blue with the tiniest bit of PBR7, and I will leave the versions of each that I'm using below. Oh yeah, I'd say that's pretty not far off. And so I think for the one up here though, it's a slightly different mix. Not blue enough. It could also be that she's using a different ultramarine. It granulates more than the ultramarine I'm using. And I've just labeled the pigment numbers down here, but I will leave the info in the description for which colors they actually are. It could also be a different PBR7. And that might be the case. So, what is a different PBR7? not a PBR7. I need a different PBR7. Okay, let's try burnt sienna. Which has really toned down this gray, and I think gives us the right or better granulation. Yeah, I'd say that's closer. So it's definitely a different PBR7 than I thought it was. But that's the thing with doing these, is that sometimes the color you think is the right color isn't the right color. So now that I know it's a different PBR7, let's try this Ash Moon, which also has two different purples in it. It's got quinacridone red, which is a purple pigment but is really a pinky color. And it's got dioxazine violet. And I've just added too much of both of them, because dioxazine violet as a color is super overpowering. So I'm actually just going to take a titch of that mixture and a whole bunch of lapis and a whole bunch of burnt sienna. I think we're still slightly too purple. Let's hit it with a little bit more blue. Yeah, I'd say that isn't too far off. Next up is potentially the most difficult color, which is Cozmick Creations Pebble, which is a mixture of 5 different pigments. I am going to start with the... I'm going to start with the red, because it's in the highest concentration. I'm also going to do it in one of these big wells, because I'm going to mix up way more than I think I need. PG8. So that is this green. And then lapis. And then yellow. The ratios for this might be really off, and I might need to tweak it a whole bunch. And then cobalt violet. Where are we at on first pass? We are at like a really opaque red-brown. So definitely need some more green. And I've gone too green. And so now we are going more purple. This is why I hate mixing grays. At this point, no, we're still too green. It's like starting to get better. As a color, grays are just really hard to mix, and so I prefer not to do it. Especially with a gray that's got so much going on pigment-wise like this one does. Oh, that isn't awful. It isn't the gray that I was aiming for. Clearly, like, this washes out to be Oh, it doesn't wash. No, it's more sort of neutral in its undertone and less yellowy. It's still quite pretty. And then the last one is this White Nights one, which I wasn't going to include just because of the controversy around White Nights, but I do think it's an interesting color just because of the pigments they've picked for it. It uses a red pigment that isn't used as often, which is PR87. And it's sort of a less easy to find one. I only have one version of it in my palette, and it is actually from White Nights in their collection. And then it also uses ultramarine blue. The other thing is you can never be quite sure that you've got the right colors grabbed. In this case, it could be a different version of ultramarine blue that they're using. They could be using ultramarine blue dark. That's a purple now. Let's add a titch more green. Like, even in mass tone, it doesn't write. It's too purple. Do you have a different PG7? Overall, I don't mix for grays very often, and if I do, I sort of use cheat sheet cards that I've made up. So these are the cards I made up. They're all actually just Cozmick Creations paints because those are what I had on my desk at the time. And they're all different combinations that give me different grays. And so if I ever have to mix for a gray, these are what I pull. Because as you can see, like, some of them I got fairly close. And then some of them are just like totally out there. And that's just sometimes what happens when trying to mix for a gray. It's not one of those colors that is easy to mix for. This is another PBR7. But a different one. And so clearly this one worked way better in these mixes than this one did. This was Cyprus Raw Umber Deep. And this one was a Burnt Sienna. And I will leave all the information in the description for which colors I use, just because it makes the page too busy to list everything out on here. So, I hope you enjoyed learning a bit about mixing grays. There are definitely some easy ways to get a gray. The easiest way I've found is going a yellow, a blue, a green, and a pink. Tends to give me my favorite gray. Or working from a color palette I already have. So, for purely curiosity's sake, let's go Lapis, Buzzy Bee. Let's do that as my pink, so that's Quinacridone Rose. And let's do Deep Pine as my green. And I've already put in too much Deep Pine, so we're just gonna scoot that off to the side and add way more of the other colors. That's the other thing. Sometimes your green will totally overpower everything else. And you'll end up in like this weird like situation of trying to make it work. What's that like? It's pretty brown. Add a titch of purple. I've added too much purple. And add a titch of a different green. I'm just pulling from what I've got sitting next to me. that I've already got pulled out for this video because there we go. There's like a nice like neutral gray. To get there though, I think I used 6 or 7 different colors. And so really, it's just easier to find a tube or a pan of gray you like and purchase it. One of the things I like about granulating grays, specifically Pebble, which I've used as a single tone painting, is that you can do single tone paintings with them really well because you can build up those layers, because you can use them really dilute and then you can just build them up. And a really good granulating gray will give you a whole bunch of colors. So Pebble, you get the like almost not there to a really dark brown gray. So I will make note of what this was. I think this was almost everything. This was PG7 plus PG8 plus PB29 plus PY73 74 plus PV19 plus PR23. They're not in the order that I added them in because honestly I don't know what quantities of which I put in, but that sort of gives you an idea of mixing grays by yourself. I would say that looking at the pigments for a gray is sometimes a great place to start. Sometimes it just doesn't work. These two are great examples of it, like not quite working, because this has gone really, really purple in the middle. And that original version doesn't do that. That also happens because the pigments are being mulled together when the colors are being created. And that's not happening when you're mixing the color yourself. And so they're going to separate out differently than they would in a color that was created and mulled together. Overall though, it is a fun sort of experiment to do, trying to create your own grays, and sometimes you find a color you do really like this neutral tinty color. So I hope you enjoy.